Have you ever felt like there's a part of you working against your progress, sabotaging your goals, your relationships, or your peace of mind? That's not just your imagination. According to Carl Jung, it's your shadow, the hidden side of your personality that holds everything you've denied, repressed, or ignored. In this video, we're going to confront that darkness directly and show you how understanding it can change your life. You'll learn how the shadow influences your everyday decisions, your emotional outbursts, and even the people you're drawn to or repelled by. This isn't just theory. This is practical, deep psychological insight that can help you break negative patterns, take back control of your inner life, and unlock parts of your personality you never knew existed. If you're feeling stuck, lost, or haunted by recurring struggles, this video is your mirror. Stay with me until the end, and I'll give you powerful tools to start integrating your shadow and living with more authenticity, emotional clarity, and power. It is undeniable that we are on the brink of a major shift in our psychological mindset. Why is this so evident? Because we are in urgent need of a deeper understanding of psychology and human nature. The real danger we face does not come from external forces, but from within ourselves. Man is the greatest risk to his own existence, and yet we know so little about our own nature. It is imperative that we study psychology, for within it lies the root of all evil that may emerge. Have you ever felt as though something inside you is sabotaging your best efforts, hindering your progress? Imagine if I told you there is a hidden part of your personality, acting in the shadows, influencing your every move through synchronicities. This hidden side is what Carl Jung called the shadow. The shadow represents the portion of our unconscious that harbors all the aspects of ourselves we reject or deny, repressed desires, instincts, weaknesses, and parts of our personality we consider negative or undesirable. These hidden traits shape our behavior and emotions in subtle yet powerful ways, often without our awareness. To truly understand the influence of the shadow, it is essential to explore how it is formed and how it affects our lives. If you've ever wondered why, even with the best intentions, it seems like something inside you is always sabotaging you, then it's time to face the roots of that inner resistance. Your participation is essential for us to continue exploring the mysteries of the human mind together. Do you know the shadow that dwells within you? Jung warns us in his work Psychology and Religion that, unfortunately, human beings are generally less virtuous than they imagine or wish to be. Each of us carries a shadow, and the less we recognize and integrate this shadow into our conscious lives, the darker and denser it becomes. When we acknowledge our inferiorities, we have the opportunity to correct them. They remain in contact with other aspects of our psyche and are constantly being transformed. However, if these weaknesses are repressed and pushed out of consciousness, they will never be corrected. All of us possess a shadow, and the less it is integrated into our awareness, the deeper and darker it becomes. If we are aware of our flaws, we can work on correcting them. However, if these flaws are repressed and excluded from consciousness, they not only remain unresolved but also risk emerging suddenly during moments of distraction. In the end, this creates an unconscious barrier that undermines even our best intentions, often manifesting through meaningful coincidences. The formation of the shadow is influenced by social norms, personal experiences, and repressions. From childhood, we learn which behaviors, thoughts, and emotions are deemed unacceptable by our family and society. These characteristics end up being pushed into the unconscious. For example, a child taught that feeling anger is wrong may repress that emotion, making it part of their shadow. The shadow contains a variety of qualities, strengths, and potentials that, if not explored, can result in an incomplete personality. These unrecognized aspects can create unconscious barriers that prevent the full development and expression of these positive traits. Recognizing that we all carry a shadow is fundamental to understanding the profound impact it has on our lives. Let us now explore the different types of shadows, beginning with the personal shadow. During a patient's analysis, a typical process occurs where shadow integration happens in a unique way. One of the most common methods for this is dream analysis, which allows the individual to become familiar with the contents of their unconscious. Initially, these contents generally involve personal material. With the concept introduced, we can now delve deeper into the different forms of the shadow. The ego, in theory, should represent the person in their entirety. However, in situations where, for example, B knows A but A does not know B, we could say that the ego is more aligned with C since the ego possesses broader knowledge. In these cases, A reveals itself as a divided personality, with parts of itself unknown even to itself. When I mention the term self, I am referring to your empirical self, often called the ego. However, when we speak of the higher self, we are referring to a personality that goes beyond the ego, encompassing more than what you are consciously aware of. The ego is limited to your conscious identity, while the higher self is a broader and more complete representation of your entire personality, including both conscious and unconscious elements. Carl Jung reflected on a crucial point for his personal understanding. He realized something fundamental about his own nature when he remembered a specific person he deeply despised. He noticed that his contempt was so intense that if he had encountered this person in an isolated situation, he might have acted in a revealing way, exposing a side of himself that surprised him. Jung, while recalling his youth, reflected on the violent thoughts that occasionally surfaced in his mind. He admitted these thoughts were not constant, but they arose especially when someone deeply irritated him. In those moments, his reaction was marked by violence. Although not frequent, when anger overtook him, it was intense and difficult to control. He described himself as a strong and imposing person, raised in a rural environment where life was tough. This physical strength made him aware of his capacity for violent acts, something that concerned him. This fear led him to avoid situations that could push him to the edge, as he did not fully trust his self-control. One vivid memory Jung shared was of an incident where he was attacked by about 7 boys. Overcome by rage, he grabbed one of them by the legs and, with a powerful gesture, spun him around, knocking down 4 others. After that episode, the aggressors were satisfied and left him alone. This experience, among others, deeply shaped his perception of himself and his capacity for confrontation. Jung reflects on the aggression and violence he felt in his youth. He acknowledges both the intensity of his emotions and his physical strength, but also admits his fear of losing control, something that led him to avoid situations that might trigger violent behavior. Have you ever stopped to think about who you really are when you're among other people? What drives us to wear masks and adopt certain roles in different social situations? Is the image we project our true self, or are we simply playing a role that society expects from us? Now that we have a basic understanding of the concept of the shadow, let's delve deeper into Jung's model of the psyche. Let's begin with the term persona. Persona versus true self, the mask we all wear. Persona is a practical concept that Jung used to explain how people relate socially. He noticed, especially in patients with public lives, that they tend to present themselves in a certain way. The persona is partly shaped by societal expectations and partly by each individual's desire to be seen in a specific way. However, this persona does not represent someone's true personality, despite many believing it to be completely authentic. This performance or manifestation of the persona is acceptable as long as the person is aware that their outward appearance is not identical to their true self. In the psychic model developed by Jung, various personified structures coexist and interact within our inner world. Among these structures, the persona and the anima/animus play important relational roles. The persona deals with how we present ourselves to the external world, while the anima and animus influence our inner life. The ego, grounded in our bodily experience and functioning as the executive part of our personality, is closely linked to the shadow. Together, the ego and the shadow are central elements that shape our identity. The anima represents the feminine aspect within a man's unconscious. It symbolizes the inner feminine side, affecting not only how men relate to women but also their own emotions and emotional life. The animus, on the other hand, is the masculine counterpart present in the unconscious of women. It symbolizes the inner masculine aspect, influencing women's interactions with men as well as their assertiveness and capacity for reason. To understand how the unconscious influences our reality, we must explore Jung's view of the interaction between personal and collective shadows. The human psyche operates under two fundamental conditions: the influence of the environment and the intrinsic nature of the psyche itself. The higher self, according to Jung, is a term that encompasses the totality of personality. Since the full personality of an individual is indescribable, we can only describe and see our conscious awareness, while the unconscious remains out of reach. By definition, it is always unconscious and unknown. Although we may have some hints or ideas about the unconscious, the truth is, we do not fully know it. No one can precisely say where a human being's personality ends, and it is exactly this uncertainty that makes the study of the psyche so fascinating. Jung emphasizes that although we have occasional insights, most of our unconscious personality escapes us. He also points out that the psyche is shaped by both environmental influences and innate psychological factors present from birth. Furthermore, he criticizes the tendency to focus exclusively on purely personal approaches without considering the historical conditions that also shape human beings. Our history has a significant impact on us. We are shaped by our upbringing and by the influence of our parents, who themselves were affected by historical ideas, or what Jung refers to as cultural and social dominance. This is a crucial point in psychology. Our existence did not begin yesterday. We are the result of entire eras of development. Jung expresses his disagreement with approaches that concentrate exclusively on the personal aspects of psychology while ignoring historical and collective influences. He highlights that our psyche is deeply shaped by historical context, parental influence, and social norms that are rooted in our culture and deeply impact our psychological development. Imagine a place within you where the emotions you fear the most are hiding, ready to surface at any moment. What if these emotions were influencing your decisions in ways you can't even imagine? What if parts of your personality that you've never wanted to admit were shaping your interactions with the world? Let us now delve into the shadow, the dark side you don't know. In Volume 9, Part 2 of his collected works, Carl Jung explains that the shadow characteristics, our inferiorities, possess an emotional nature, a certain autonomy, and therefore exhibit an obsessive or even possessive quality. These aspects of the personality are often those we try to hide, repress, or deny, both from ourselves and from others, because they represent parts of us that we don't want to admit. Ignoring or failing to deal with our shadow can result in serious problems. Think of a time when you experienced an intense and seemingly irrational emotion. Was that emotion truly caused by what was happening at that moment, or was there something deeper behind it? The shadow becomes more evident when we are overwhelmed by emotions such as anxiety. For example, under the influence of alcohol, someone might make a hostile comment during a conversation that was previously friendly. When we refuse to accept the aspects of ourselves that we despise, we tend to project them onto others. There are people who deny the existence of their shadow so thoroughly that the ego doesn't even recognize the behaviors resulting from it, making any form of control impossible. In such cases, the shadow acts autonomously, manifesting in forms of irritability, cruelty, and inexplicable mood swings. Psychic events are realities that occur within our inner world. When you observe the flow of images and thoughts inside you, you're exploring an aspect of this inner world. If we consider these phenomena as integral to all living beings, we come to understand that the matter we are made of contains an additional dimension, the psychic world. The positive aspects of understanding our shadow. Based on the book Jung Speaking, Interviews and Encounters, when you observe the external world, you see people, houses, the sky, tangible objects. However, when you turn inward, what you find are moving images, a world of fantasies. Though often disregarded, these fantasies are concrete facts. Think about it. A fantasy can be powerful enough to influence another person's life or even lead to the construction of a bridge. These houses and everything you see around you began as fantasies. Although intangible, fantasy has its own reality and should not be underestimated. Even though it isn't a physical object, it remains a concrete fact. Carl Jung described a striking experience that illustrates the existence of an impersonal part of our psyche. He recounted the case of a quiet, dissociated patient diagnosed with schizophrenia. This man had been hospitalized for more than 20 years, admitted to the clinic as a confused, poorly educated young man. One day, during a visit to the patient's ward, Jung noticed he seemed visibly agitated. The man grabbed Jung's coat and led him to the window. With great enthusiasm he said, "Now look at the sun and see how it moves. Move your head like this and you'll see the sun's tails. That's where the wind comes from. Watch how the sun shifts as you move your head side to side." At the time, Jung didn't understand what the patient meant, assuming it was a delusion. However, the case continued to intrigue him. Years later, he came across an article by a German scholar who had studied the Mithraic liturgy, part of the Great Magical Papyrus of Paris. In the article, Jung found a passage that read, "After the second prayer, you will see the solar disk unfold, and from it hangs the tube, the origin of the wind. And when you turn your face to the east, it will move in that direction. Turn west and it will follow." This coincidence revealed to Jung how something seemingly senseless could be connected to ancient traditions and knowledge that transcend time and logic. Upon reading it, Jung instantly realized, "This is what I saw in my patient's mind." But what troubled him was how to be sure the patient hadn't simply remembered something he had heard. Jung knew that was impossible. The patient had no access to that information, which was unpublished and stored in a magical papyrus in Paris. Intriguingly, that papyrus was only made public 4 years after the experience. To many, this might seem like proof of an unconscious that extends beyond the personal. For Jung, it wasn't proof, but a valuable clue worth exploring. Fantasies and the reality of the unconscious. These examples are fundamental because they highlight Jung's deep insight into the unconscious and its impact on our behavior and perception. Jung shows us that fantasies and dreams have a concrete reality. The unconscious is not just a repository of repressed or forgotten thoughts, but a powerful active force within our psyche, intensely shaping our experiences and actions. This understanding leads us to recognize that our inner world is just as real and influential as the external world we observe. Integrating the shadow. In his writings, Jung stresses the importance of bringing the shadow to consciousness in psychotherapy and understanding how it projects into one's life. Though often seen negatively, the shadow can also hold positive aspects. In fact, exploring our shadow can connect us with many beneficial qualities. In Collected Works, Volume 9, Part 2, Jung writes, "The first of these is the shadow, this hidden, repressed personality, often inferior and burdened with guilt, whose deepest roots reach back to the realm of our animal ancestors, encompassing the entire historical aspect of the unconscious. While it was once believed that the human shadow was purely the source of evil, more careful investigation shows that the unconscious human, his shadow, also possesses many good qualities. Normal instincts, appropriate reactions, realistic perceptions, creative impulses, and more. Man is not whole if he is not aware of this dimension of existence. To be truly whole, we must not live merely in a world of statistical truths. We must live in a world that reflects our biological truth. A truth that not only satisfies but expresses who we truly are, who we feel we are." The shadow and individuation. Reflections on the shadow and the higher self, according to Jung, highlight the need to recognize and integrate all aspects of our personality to achieve true psychological wholeness. Marie-Louise von Franz, one of Jung's closest collaborators, discusses the individuation process in Man and His Symbols, specifically in the 3rd chapter. The shadow is not necessarily an enemy. It's like any person we must learn to live with. Sometimes we must yield, other times resist or even offer love depending on the situation. The shadow becomes hostile only when ignored or misunderstood. In daily life, the shadow shows up in our personal flaws, those traits we all have but prefer not to acknowledge, like greed, jealousy, laziness, or lack of empathy. These traits, while uncomfortable, are not archetypal mysteries. They are aspects of our personal unconscious that we can bring to consciousness. When dealing with the unconscious, especially in specific cases, we notice it takes on a more introverted quality when our extroverted traits emerge in consciousness. This observation has diagnostic value, helping us better understand ourselves and others. Both von Franz and Jung emphasize, to become whole, we must recognize, understand, and integrate the shadow, this complex, emotional part of our unconscious. To better understand, imagine the shadow as a dark figure following you. At first, it may seem intimidating, but when you face it, you realize it is simply a part of yourself that needs understanding and compassion. For instance, someone might associate assertiveness with rudeness and, as a result, avoid assertive behavior. This repression could lead to a lack of initiative, financial difficulties, and other problems. When encountering an assertive person, they might feel resentment or guilt, intensifying the darkness of their own shadow. These valuable aspects of the personality should be integrated into real experience, not repressed. The ego must let go of its pride and recognize that the unconscious acts in a compensatory way toward consciousness. Over time, this allows us to gain a more complete view of ourselves. When we reach that full vision and possess the necessary moral resilience, we can then find healing and personal growth. Ultimately, the question is deeply moral. It concerns how the unconscious reflects back into consciousness. Let's put this into practice by exploring some tips for working with the shadow. A good starting point is to keep a journal. Use it to record moments when you experience intense emotional reactions and reflect on what may have triggered them. Over time, by observing your daily emotional responses, you'll begin to identify patterns that reveal hidden aspects of your shadow. When you feel a strong emotion, pause and ask yourself what prompted that response. Record your reflections to more clearly identify these patterns over time. The shadow also appears in our dreams, often personified by a figure of the same sex as the dreamer. This figure acts as an inner critic, representing the unconscious's judgment of our character, often bringing discomfort and awkward silence. The goal is to recognize the contents of the shadow and integrate them into our personality. It's common to notice that when you speak with someone about your deep concerns, interests, and emotions, that person also ends up revealing their personal complexes. This creates an opportunity for you to become a reference point, an internal authority in your own development. Jung proposed that by confronting and integrating our shadow, these repressed aspects can be transformed into a source of self-knowledge and inner power, empowering us to guide our own personal growth. Dream analysis is a powerful tool for connecting with the unconscious and initiating the process of shadow work. It is a challenging path that demands deep and continuous self-education. It's like embarking on a strenuous journey where the dialogue with the shadow requires patience and persistence. Similar to the myth of Sisyphus, condemned to roll a stone uphill only for it to roll back down again. This work allows us to observe how the shadow manifests both externally, by analyzing our emotional reactions and being brutally honest about our interactions with others, and internally by examining our dreams. Before we dive into the intriguing ways the shadow reveals itself in our lives, it is essential to understand how this hidden part is closely tied to the core of our identity. Carl Jung, in his Alchemical Studies in Collected Works, Volume 13, states, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." However, this process is uncomfortable, and therefore rarely popular. With a clearer understanding of our identity, it's time to observe the shadow in action. Let's investigate how this hidden part influences our behaviors and daily decisions. Understanding our shadow is essential, but contrary to popular belief, it doesn't have to be frightening. It can, in fact, be a profoundly revealing and fascinating experience. The journey of self-discovery allows a person to reach enlightenment and reduce the destructive potential of the shadow, not by fighting darkness, but by bringing darkness into the light and allowing light to enter the darkness. Carl Jung, in Collected Works, Volume 12, Psychology and Alchemy, affirms, "There is no light without shadow and no psychic wholeness without imperfection." Though confronting our shadow may seem daunting, the truth we discover in the process brings relief and clarity. This discernment is a path to authenticity, a deep exploration of our being, where we uncover both our possibilities and our limitations, discovering parts of ourselves often buried and forgotten. However, many people are reluctant to reflect deeply, even on the moral aspects of their known behavior, let alone on how the unconscious may influence them. A useful practice to improve self-awareness is radical honesty with oneself. When you feel irritation or discomfort, pause and reflect on whether these feelings might be connected to your shadow. Also, pay attention to synchronicities as they can offer valuable insights. Now that we've covered the personal shadow, let's expand our understanding to the collective shadow. The shadow is not limited to individual experiences. It also encompasses forces that originate outside personal life, emerging from the dark side of a society or culture. Have you ever wondered how invisible forces can shape the fate of an entire society? What happens when what we collectively ignore or repress begins to manifest in unexpected and dangerous ways? Could devastating historical events have been anticipated, or even avoided, if we had paid more attention to the signs? The collective shadow, the hidden side of society you need to know. The collective shadow represents everything that opposes the shared values and principles that sustain our social coexistence. It reveals unknown or ignored aspects of our social environment. To better understand the implications of the collective shadow, we must observe how archetypal ideas permeate individuals over centuries. These ideas flow like a constant river, emerging in large political, social, or religious movements. A clear example is the Reformation. Long before it began, people dreamed of great change. If someone had been attentive, they could have predicted those transformations based on the mental climate of the time. Jung reported that what happens in people's collective mind, often unconsciously, can be anticipated. He explained that he foresaw the rise of Nazism in Germany by observing the dreams of his German patients. According to Jung, those dreams revealed the entire future situation in astonishing detail. The collective shadow is a vast and often terrifying aspect of human life. It has the potential to cause deep damage to both humanity and the natural world, with consequences that last for generations. It manifests through the projection of darkness, violence, oppression, and a widespread denial of responsibility. These manifestations materialize as wars, genocides, and cultural destruction. This force, vast and deceptive, is responsible for atrocities and persecution, often disguised as benign actions such as the imposition of new languages or ideologies. Externally, the collective shadow appears as physical suffering, poverty, and crime. Internally, it breeds self-hatred, depression, and a thirst for vengeance, resulting in more pain and suffering for others. The collective shadow has often been associated with evil, comparable to the concept of the devil in Christian tradition, where demonic possession suppresses a person's humanity and replaces it with a malevolent nature. For Carl Jung, the key to confronting this evil lies in the relentless pursuit of self-knowledge and psychological integrity. Each individual must recognize the full scope of their capacities, understanding both the good they can do and the negative acts they are capable of committing. Every society carries its own collective issues, shared convictions, and cultural influences that shape individual behavior. These factors deeply affect us because we belong to specific political, religious, or social groups, which can significantly influence our actions. While our personal conflicts remain within our private sphere, they don't touch these collective aspects. However, when we step beyond the personal and confront impersonal issues, like political or social problems that directly affect us, we face the collective shadow. When a society faces a clear problem, it can be considered a shadow issue if there are signs of denial, projection, and a lack of responsibility at both individual and collective levels. Assuming moral, political, and spiritual responsibility is essential to facing these challenges. The courage with which we confront our own darkness can free others from the burden of carrying it for us. To illustrate, consider how we must deal with the past and take responsibility in response to mass historical suffering, such as wars, genocides, holocausts, and widespread oppression. The effects of these traumatic events persist, and as human beings we still have much to learn. Denial, often driven by a desire to move on and forget, is a common and typically first reaction. Many efforts have been made to address historical wounds. Public apologies, expressions of regret, reparation payments, and pilgrimages to sites of suffering. However, the real question is, how can we deeply integrate the collective shadow within a population, rather than simply making symbolic gestures through leaders or policies? The process of remembering and speaking about what is almost unspeakable is painful for everyone involved: victims, perpetrators, observers, and witnesses. This process can only be considered successful or complete when pain, indignation, betrayal, and all other emotions are fully expressed and heard, and when responsibility is fully assumed. Telling the truth becomes the most desirable and effective way to confront a difficult past. The world is, in a sense, balanced on a delicate thread: human sanity. Imagine what could happen if, in a moment of instability, certain individuals in positions of power lost their reason. The entire planet could be devastated. Today we are no longer threatened primarily by natural disasters, but by human actions. We ourselves have become the greatest danger. The human psyche is the greatest risk, and if something goes wrong within it, the effects can be seen all around us. Despite the power of the human mind, our understanding of it remains limited, and few people truly grasp the significance of the mental processes that unfold within the average individual. A striking example of mass psychosis driven by the collective shadow is systemic racism and police brutality, where deeply rooted biases and personal prejudices evolve into widespread discrimination and violence. Under certain conditions, ordinary people may engage in, or silently support, behaviors they would normally reject. The personal shadow acts as a bridge to the collective shadow. Therefore, resolving our internal conflicts is fundamental to avoiding unconscious participation in destructive behaviors that affect society as a whole. Imagine an individual who, upon reaching a critical point in their internal conflict, begins to suffer mentally. That suffering can have a collective impact, aggravating larger social issues. So how do we confront the collective shadow? Step 1. Face your personal shadow. This requires deep self-examination, honesty in our interactions, monitoring our emotional responses, and analyzing our dreams. This process protects us from becoming unconscious victims of our own darkness. By recognizing our unconscious projections, we can discover and cultivate positive traits within ourselves, enriching not only our own lives but also the lives of those around us. Confronting the collective shadow allows us to avoid its negative influence by assuming responsibility for neglected issues and inaction, both personal and societal. Facing our darkness with courage not only relieves others from bearing our burden but also allows us to correct past wrongs and prevent the repetition of destructive historical patterns. Imagine this. Every step you've taken to get here is like a journey into the unknown, a courageous exploration of the depths of your psyche. Every word and concept discussed in this video has been an invitation to uncover what is most hidden and intriguing within us. If you're here right now, it's because you accepted that invitation. You didn't just watch this video. You allowed these ideas to penetrate your mind and challenge your view of the world and yourself. This willingness to dive into the unconscious and face your shadow is rare and powerful. Now, I want to share something special with you. As a fan of the channel The Power of the Mind, you're about to embark on a unique journey of self-discovery and mental transformation. I present to you The Art of Positive Thinking, a revolutionary ebook that will redefine your mental reality. As the creator of this content and leader of this channel, I'm sharing with you my deepest experiences and most valuable lessons. Each chapter of this ebook reflects my personal journey, filled with practical insights I've lived through and turned into wisdom. Don't miss this opportunity to change your life. Click the link in the pinned comment and start your journey towards self-knowledge and positivity today. Picture your life as a grand theater, where each emotion, desire, and fear has a role to play. As this video ends and you walk out of the theater, through the doors of consciousness, you take with you not just knowledge but the courage to integrate the parts of yourself that once felt frightening or confusing. And that, my friend, is the beginning of deep transformation. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for staying until the end. Your presence, your time, and your open mind make all the difference. Together, we're not just exploring ideas, we're creating a safe, enriching space for reflection and self-awareness. If you felt this journey brought value to your life, don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel to continue this fascinating exploration of the mind and soul. Leave a like if the content resonated with you and share your reflections in the comments. Your experiences are a vital part of this exchange. Remember, the journey continues. Each insight you've gained here is a small light in the darkness of the unknown, and that light will only grow as you move forward. Thank you for being part of this community that seeks to understand and embrace the true essence of humanity. Until the next video, where we'll continue to explore the mysteries of the mind and heart together, you are essential on this journey. And before you go, don't miss these 2 videos I've selected especially for you. They're filled with fascinating knowledge and discoveries you'll love. Click one of them and continue your journey of self-discovery and the pursuit of wisdom with the amazing content our channel has to offer.